Hello there, welcome to Being Beta, where today I'm going to be changing the fuel filter on a 2004 T5 2.5 litre TDI Caravelle or transporter. Okay, so kit I'm going to use, I'm going to need some either clean cloth or paper towel. We're going to use this tube here with a container. I'll explain that in a bit once we're cracking on. We're going to need a larger flathead screwdriver. We're going to need a Phillips screwdriver, pair of pliers, needle nose these are called, and then a pair of mole grips as well, and then a new fuel filter. Now in here I've also got attachments to make the flathead smaller as well, and it'll be helpful to have a smaller flathead on this one as well. So first things first, you're going to need your large flathead screwdriver, just to undo these screws that's holding the engine cover in place. Next thing to do is to remove the wiring connector that's going into this coolant expansion tank. Now if you can't pinch it using your thumb and first finger, that's where you'll use this small flathead Phillips just to help lever it off as you pinch it from both sides. Now we're going to use either mole grips or our adjustable wrench or our hose clip pliers just to remove this hose clip here. Now you don't need to move this one at the back because we're just going to be lifting this out of the way so we have better access to the fuel filter itself. So you only need to remove this one for now. So with that hose removed, we can now undo these two screws here, and then we'll be able to lift the coolant expansion tank over to one side, and then we can get access to the fuel filter. So with the coolant expansion tank out of the way, I've got the hose here, I've wrapped it a bit just to stop any leakage, and then the next thing you're going to do is actually wipe down the pipes themselves, just stop any debris falling down into the new fuel filter once you've got it in place. Also take a picture at this stage just to make sure you've got the orientation of the pipes, a record of that, and then this is where I'm going to use my chalk now just to chalk on here top, right, bottom and left, just for my own peace of mind, so I know that I'm absolutely putting the right hoses back on the fuel filter in the right order. So the next step is to surround the fuel filter with a bit of cloth or rag, and this is as you take these pipes off, any excess fuel can go onto the cloth rather than into the engine bay itself. Now at this stage, this is where your fuel line clip pliers, let me get that right, yeah, your fuel line clip pliers will be really useful, whereas if you haven't got those, then again mole grips or needle nose pliers, anything like that, just so you can get purchase either side of these fuel lines. Pinch the base just here and on the opposite side, and then once it's pinched you're then able to lift up. So just here and here right at the base, and then you should be able to lift up. So with that done, I can now get my mole grips on this hose clamp. I can pinch it, and then I should be able to then slide the fuel filter out. Sometimes some engines will have a fuel filter housing, sort of bracket and clamp, so that's why you might need your 10mm socket to undo the bolt that holds the fuel filter in place in that housing. So you just have to check in your engine bay yourself. So I've got my new fuel filter here. I can see the tab is going to face nearest towards where the passenger would sit, towards the rear of the vehicle. As I look at it, I need to get rid of all these little plastic rubber caps, and then I'm going to pop it back in the hose clamp and then reassemble in reverse order. So just pushing that last pipe on now, and then I've left this one off. This is marked the left hand one. This is the supply line itself. So what we need to do now is prime the fuel filter with fuel, and we'll know that it's filled with fuel once fuel starts coming out this nipple. Now obviously we don't want to spill fuel into the engine bay, so this is where we use the pipe and container that I showed you at the start of the video. So I'm just going to set that up now. Okay, so you can see that the plastic or rubber hose will do snug fit onto the nipple itself, and then the other end comes into a container. So essentially what we're going to do is turn on the ignition. This will start up the fuel supply, which will push fuel into the filter, and we'll keep doing that, just turning it on for a few seconds, turning it off, turning it on, turning it off, until fuel emerges from the fuel filter and comes into this container. We then know there's enough fuel in the filter, so then we reattach. Once that's done, we reattach the supply pipe, and then we know that there'll be fuel going straight into that supply pipe, which will ultimately go into the engine and start it. Okay, so I'm not sure if you can quite make that out, but there's a bit of fuel in here. It's just started to come up into the container itself, and then it's just sunk back down. So I'm just going to do this one more time, push the fuel through, reattach the supply pipe, put the coolant expansion tank back in place with the wiring connector and the rubber hose fitting back on here, and then I can start up. And it does say, from research that I've done, it does say it can take a few cranks to get it going. So we'll see how we get on. Okay, so there she goes. In terms of turning the ignition to prime the fuel filter, it maybe took me about 6 to 8 turns of the ignition before I saw fuel come through into that plastic hose. I then had to crank the engine. It took maybe 6 cranks of turning over before it then kicked in. So now that I know it's all working, I'm going to be checking now for leaks from the fuel lines themselves going into the fuel filter. And then once I've done that and I'm happy, I'll then get the bolts back in, put that clamp on properly onto the coolant, and then I can reassemble the engine cover on top. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment, share and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.